Let me say something that most people won't admit. Walking away is one of the hardest things people will ever have to do. Not because they can't, but because they don't know who they are without it. And today, I want to talk about that reality through something we're seeing play out in real time with one of the greatest athletes to ever live, Tom Brady. Because what looks like a football story on the surface is actually a deeper story about identity, purpose, and what happens when your entire life has been built around one thing. And if you really pay attention to this, you'll start to realize this isn't just about athletes. This is about anyone who has tied who they are to what they do. Tom Brady retires after decades of dominance, championships, records. He's stepped away. Then he comes back. Then he retires again. And even now, he remains closely connected to the game, ownership, media influence. Now, from the outside looking in, it creates confusion. People ask, why go back? Why not just be done? What more is there to prove? But the question assumes that this decision is logical. It's not. Because when something has been your life for so long, you're not just stepping away from a job, you're stepping away from the environment that shaped you, that structure that guided you, the identity that defined you. And most people underestimate how deep that goes. What people don't see is what football actually represents internally for Tom Brady. Football is more than a performance, it's a system where every day has intention, every action has purpose, every result has meaning. You wake up with clarity, you train with direction, you compete with stakes, and over time, your brain begins to associate that environment with being alive, with being valuable, with being you. So when that system is removed, it's not just about what do I do now? It becomes who am I now? And that's a much heavier question because outside of that structure, there's no immediate replacement that gives you that same level of intensity, focus, or fulfillment. This is where most people get stuck and don't even realize it. When your identity is tied to performance, you begin to chase the version of yourself that only exists in that environment. So even after stepping away, your mind keeps pulling you back. You think about it, you feel it, you miss it. Not just the game, but the version of you that existed in the game, the disciplined version, the focused version, the elite version. And now, outside of all of that, you don't feel the same. So what happens? You start looking for ways to recreate that feeling. And for some, the easiest way to do that is to go back. Not because it's the best decision long term, but because it's the most familiar. Okay. Here's something that's important to understand. For most people, retirement is, it seems, as a reward. For athletes, it can feel like grief because you're not just losing an activity, you're losing a version of your life, a version of your identity, a version of your significance. You go from being recognized, respected, and relied on to having to redefine all of that. And that transition, if not handled intentionally, it can feel like you're disappearing. So instead of fully letting go, many stay connected, they stay close to the game. They maintain proximity to what they know because distance from it feels like distance from themselves. This is where the conversation shifts from observation to transformation because the real issue isn't that athletes struggle to leave. The issue is that they were never taught how to separate identity from performance. If your identity is built entirely on what you do, then when that ends, you feel like you've ended. But when you begin doing the internal work early, everything changes. You start to recognize I am not just this role, I am not just this performance, I am not just this version of myself. And when that separation happens, you don't feel like you're losing something. You feel like you're expanding into something new that's different. And that's the work that has to happen before the game ends. Now, I want to shift the conversation to something a little bit different because not every transition challenge looks like going back. Sometimes it looks like things starting to break down. Tiger Woods has recently faced another incident involving a DUI. And situations like this often gets reduced to headlines and quick judgments. But if you look deeper, you start to see something else. Moments like this are rarely about the moment itself. They're about what's happening internally. Because when someone has operated at the level for so long, there are layers beneath the surface that most people never see. When structure, competition, and identity begins to shift, a void can form. And that void isn't always obvious at first, but it shows up in subtle ways like lack of direction, emotional weight, disconnection from purpose. And if that space isn't intentionally filled, it doesn't stay empty. It gets filled automatically, sometimes with distraction, sometimes with escape, sometimes with decisions that don't reflect who someone truly is at their core. And that's what makes transition so critical because without internal alignment, external success isn't enough to sustain you. What this reveals is something important. Success can elevate your life, but it doesn't automatically stabilize it because stability doesn't come from achievements, it comes from internal clarity. And when that clarity isn't fully established, moments of pressure, change, or transition can expose what hasn't been addressed. Here's the truth: the game will always come to an end, but who you are doesn't have to be tied to it. And when you take the time to build that foundation internally, you don't just survive the transition, you step into a new level of purpose with clarity, strength, and direction. Thank you guys for watching Beyond the Field. Until next time.